I'm going from this angle this time.
Okay.
All right. All right, we're in it. All right, so yeah. So keep talking.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there are fellow staff members that I feel like if you were to be in their classroom and like just the informal, those low inference, like what did I ask? How does it flow? What was I doing? I mean, reading it all together, I was like, like everyone needs like just a day where they kind of get that, like, here's what I saw, here's what I heard.
Because my next question was, did you have any recommendations for who I should do that for? Okay, shut my door for me. You can just throw my winter coat in. This is our third winter before spring. Just throw that over there. I'm gonna declutter my
third winter.
This is like a third winter because remember 2 weeks ago it was summer, spring. So yes.
Those were the days.
So any recommendations for any tiered?
And we're recording.
No one's gonna see this.
Okay. It is nothing personal. I love all the people here, but there are definitely people who I feel would benefit from this. I mean, I'm going to speak for the math teachers. I will always advocate for them. Mr. Smith would be the first person. I would love to see kind of what you hear.
Okay.
As far as other staff members,
I'm gonna put this person too as Bolton.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm gonna put Kramer because he's one of my projects. He's my BT.
Yeah.
That I support.
In 7th grade, I would be curious with Miss Walker, with her new role and just where she's at. I think it might be, some teachers, they want the feedback for, like, they're going to ask for it, and some get it because they need it. But I think she's one that in her new role, it might help, it might help her feel more confident or just have a point of conversation because.
Gotcha. Just some feedback on where she is because she's my person I evaluate, and I compare her a lot to Parker, and I'm seeing a lot of similarities.
Okay.
So I don't have any concerns, but I do think this could be beneficial for her. Okay.
Those are the ones off the top of my head.
I did Miss Teresa's the other day, and I'm gonna share that with you. Remember when we did
yes,
open up?
Yes.
So I did hers the other day when
we
were all in there, and then
she's very open to conversations.
I would love to do Miss Harding too.
Okay.
Because new to the school and the role. So that's just some feedback for me as well as coaching.
I'm telling you, like when I was reading through it, I'm just such a reflective person sometimes. But I think even one time you getting that, it's eye-opening. So, because
usually, honestly, you're the one that goes in and does notes for people.
Yes.
And so, as a coach, that could be reflective for you. So, leading into that, I provided you. Did I give you a copy?
Well, I printed a copy.
Gotcha. Well, I printed you another one.
Thank you. This one's prettier.
Going back to that's the first thing we wanted to do: analyze our walkthrough data, and just talk about what we saw in the data. And our last goal was engaging or gauging the thinking of all learners.
Yes.
And when you look through our low inference notes, did you see evidence of that in this lesson?
I think because they were working, we had a whole group conversation, and it was helpful because a lot of scholars felt comfortable and were sharing out, so I was able to gauge it in front of everyone. Sometimes that's not always the case. And then we also worked in small group so that I could go around, and that's kind of what I did today in class too. I was part of we had this partner activity, and I'm like, okay, let's partner up. And so that way it's like low pressure. It's not like stand up in front of everyone, and sometimes there's anxiety. So I've done that with that lesson that you watched. I also have been using Desmos as well, and I just think it's powerful for somebody's incorrect, without getting called out, like they're incorrect mistakes up there, and having another scholar describe what it is without knowing who it's about.
Okay.
But if I'm the scholar who made the misconception, and I see my work on the board, I'm going to definitely listen up a little bit differently than me just coming over and saying, oh, hey, so-and-so, this is incorrect, because it's more of a dialogue. So I think that that's been very beneficial as far as checking the understanding of each learner.
So what I heard you say, that Desmos is encouraging that positive discourse.
Yes.
That's allowing students to be able to kind of check each other and learn from each other.
And feel safe in making mistakes. I think that's sometimes the biggest challenge, is like, kids don't want to be wrong.
Speaking of the safe piece, that was another equity piece. I noticed it was just the 7th graders, a smaller group. And I just noticed they were very more eager to share. And it might have been, when they're in there with the 8th graders, so I just noticed you were able to move around more and really reach the learners. Talk to me a little bit about your intentionality with questions. There were a lot of questions and a lot of very specific questions. Were they pre-planned, or they just happen to come natural with that? Tell me a little bit about your questions.
So fortunately, the curriculum already provides such a outline and kind of a thought process of like where they've been, what kind of misunderstandings they may have. So just with even that fresh knowledge, it's always good to refresh, but also the experience of, I taught it last year as well. So I kind of knew where the questions needed to go. Okay. So in order to make sure we stayed on course and it's more like a facilitation. So I validate, and then if it's not quite where we need to go, then I'll ask a different question to help us pivot. And so that's kind of where those questions came from.
Talk to me about the gradual release. It seemed like it was a format that you would give, and it was more about getting them to think, share within groups, and share out. So talk to me about that process.
Yeah, I love problem-based learning. So the problem was about the bunny. Gotta have enough space for the bunny.
The bunny has to have space to play.
That's right. And I knew there would be misconceptions about perimeter and area.
Because you taught this skill before.
Yes, and it's a common thing, in middle school especially. So, so based on experience, last year we did the task, I asked the questions, but this year I wanted something more tangible. So that's why I got out the grid paper, I gave them string, so they could really manipulate and think about what it means and have a visual. And I thought that was helpful, but it's like I posed the question, here's the yard, here's the fence, and letting them just explore before I said, this is perimeter, this is area. I was able to go around to each group, and that's where some of those check-ins were, is they got 72, but it was 72 square feet instead of 72 for the perimeter. And so we were able to have some of those conversations.
So I like how you really thought about last year, and this year you wanted to give that visual. They even talked about that in your open up coaching, and Eureka just taking those numbers and putting it in a visual so they have a frame of reference.
Yes.
We talked about that during productive struggle as well, taking what they are grappling with and putting it in a way that will give them some frame of reference.
Yes.
For them to, I don't want to say struggle with, but make it easier for them to organize their thoughts.
Yes.
So one thing I did want to point out, when it was time to share out, I noticed that 14 out of 14 scholars shared an equation. Why do you think that all 14 was eager to share? That's different. Usually you didn't have to pull it out of them. They were eager to share.
So we do have a goal that each week every scholar shares.
Oh, okay.
We want to hear, I always tell that, there's a lot of us and everyone has good thoughts, and part of our grade is coming from you standing and sharing, whether you're asking a question, answering a question. And then sometimes we play can we get everyone to share? This was not one of those days.
Gotcha. Okay, but I put intentionality there.
Yes, definitely. And so I've had some of them from last year, so they know that it's encouraged. And so I love, I get excited and I encourage more voices. So even if one scholar stands up and then stands up again, and I'm like, okay, let's give somebody else a try. And so then there becomes a little bit of social pressure, but I
Mhm.
want our kids to feel comfortable speaking in front of their peers. I mean, that's a value forever. So I think the systems that they were working on and the way they were manipulating the
Mhm.
area, I think it was kind of a good entry level
Mhm.
for them to feel comfortable with, and that they could be proud, be proud of what they're doing.
I like that too, because the aha was you gave them the materials and felt like they were able to explore as a group, talk about their thinking as a group. And so when it was time to share, it was popcorn.
Yes.
It was quick. It wasn't like you had to pull it. It was like they were, instead of social pressure,
Yeah.
I thought about social competition.
Yeah.
Because that particular group, they was thriving off that. They wanted to share, like, that no one wanted not to share.
Exactly.
So that was really interesting to see. So I really think that with this lesson, based off what we talked about last time, gauging the thinking of all the learners, you were successful in that. I really think that the intentionality piece, you being explicit with your students about your expectations.
Yes.
And they know your expectations, and they've lived up to that. So in the groups, you wanted them to grapple with what we talked about yesterday in PLCs, that productive struggle.
Yes.
So yesterday in PLCs, we talked about productive struggle. We were introduced to that. The other day in Open Up Coaching, we kind of talked about that before we were formally introduced to that. And so talk to me about, that's what our focus is for today, productive struggle. What evidence was there of productive struggle in that particular Math 1 lesson, do you feel?
I think the productive struggle was me walking, them having that 72, and me going, and just walking away.
Mm-hmm.
They are very competitive and they are eager. But when you hear, wait, what? And then you hear the conversation.
Yes. Gigi, I can hear her.
So I think, sometimes our kids get so confident because it looks familiar that when you walk by and you're like, that's like all it was. It wasn't like they shut down. They know that if there was a big misconception, obviously I would not just leave them hanging. However, I can't just give it all to them, and just to encourage them to keep trying. So I think allowing that to happen was productive struggle. And you're right, because we did this last Friday and yesterday, the activity I did in my class this morning, I also had some productive struggle because, it's one of those things like, okay, yeah, you want your kids to have that, but sometimes the intentionality kind of goes by the wayside. So it was a very good conversation because I don't think kids really understand that struggle's okay. Kind of like they don't
Remember
know.
We talked about that negative connotation to struggle. Productive grappling. I don't know.
I know though. Well, and that's it. I like that effort and persistence. Like, don't give up. Think of another way. And one of the phrases I have started thinking about is whenever they're brainstorming, whenever they're trying to solve something, the phrase "be unique and be clever."
Well, anyone loves the word unique. They want to be different. Yep. Anyone loves that, to stand out.
Yes. And I think that could even be something with mistakes. Like if you have a mistake, how is it unique? How did you think about it? So I think that could be just like that word struggle. So negative.
Yes.
The kids feel it's negative. We don't think it's negative. But
no one likes to struggle.
That's true.
No one. No. So I have a question for you. Thinking about your general ed class with productive struggle, as far as, do you plan to like intentionally introduce it to them as like you did your Math 1? Or how do you plan, what would be the difference with the productive struggle with your general ed versus your Math 1 advanced?
So that, obviously creating a safe space for our kids to talk and share and be wrong is important.
Yes.
And that is like the foundation that I build. I don't mind taking a little longer at the beginning of the year because it's like exponential towards the end. As far as the Core 2 and Core 3 Grade 8, they have been a challenge because they are often judgmental you know, and if you're wrong, you don't want to be wrong because
Not
you
in
missed
that
something.
right.
So just, I think for me, modeling my thinking, like when a scholar makes a mistake and being excited about it and just saying, oh my gosh, yes, it's a learning opportunity, just to help change that mindset, because I think they've been living in that. Some of the activities I've done to help set the tone, like once I got to, is we did this left-right activity I found online. And so it's all they have to do is listen to a story and make it go left, make a card go left, or make a card go right. And so I read the story, blah, 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 and then I ask them questions after that about the story. And they're like, I don't know, we weren't listening, we were listening for left or right. I said, and they got frustrated, like, no, she said left, no, she. And I said, this was literally one direction. You either go left or you go right. And you look at how frustrated we got.
Gotcha.
And so I'm like, when you add math into that, it's an even bigger frustration.
I like how you modeled it though. Like,
yeah,
before you even gave them the math, you just modeled the process.
Yes.
Like the game of telephone. I used to kind of play that with my students about paraphrasing and inferencing. How you start with one message and by the time it ends, and just how we haven't even really added stories and into this. We're just trying to get the format of the process down.
So I think that's something I want to work on as Miss Teresa and I work together, because she's gonna want the same thing. She's not the kind of teacher where she's just gonna talk to them. She wants them to have dialogue and discourse and be productive, that productive part. So I think we need to do, it's almost like that weird time of year where we need to kind of slow down.
I agree.
To reset that expectation and model it and do like, would you rather Wednesday? Those are my favorite, because everyone wants to blurt out their answer, but it actually allows the scholars to control and to feel what it feels like to not blurt out, to feel what it feels like to control their thinking and take turns and honor other people's thinking. And so that's something I want to, because that, when you struggle, you feel it in your body. You feel frustrated, you feel aggravated, you feel like out of control.
Yes.
And then to throw math in there, some kids just have such an aversion to it. And so just letting them know it's okay to feel these things, I think that's where we're at. And that's kind of where I want to take this, is like, let's feel what it feels like to struggle and know it's okay. And now when you're in math, this is just me thinking out loud. And then when you're in math and you feel that feeling, just know it's okay. Like, it's going to happen.
Self-regulation.
Self-regulation.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So all of those are great strategies. I hear you saying you want to talk about just getting them through the process of struggling and making it be okay before you even add the math in. Just a reset with the students. Slowing down just a little bit with your general ed, because you notice even with your math 1, they needed a temperature check.
Yes.
So that talked to me about my last point is the scaffolds. You talked about that a little bit with your math 1. You were giving them, I noticed some scaffolds as well when they were getting stuck. Talk about, when do you feel it's time to provide some scaffolds?
Depends on what class and what concept, for sure. I think it's also scholar by scholar. I have to go, and that's why I'm so glad we sit at tables, because even if one scholar, I see something, I'm really talking to all of them. And so the good thing is, like, somebody may not ask the question, but I might see something. And so I think for me, the why and how of it all is, I may see a scholar working, and whether they're right or not, I'll ask why or how. And gauging on their response from that, I'll know, oh, I just got it from my friend, or I had a misconception, or I got this, but I don't know how I got it. And so just making that dialogue okay and having the kids talk about it.
So let me ask you a question, because and this is, I know you are experienced, you're a math coach, and you know your misconceptions. I'm just thinking about, like, of my Miss Bolton. Even though we know she's taught the curriculum for 4 years, how can I ensure, as her leadership coach, that she knows the misconceptions that can come with these different standards, because I know the Eureka coach mentioned it, even basically saying, you taught this, you should know the misconceptions, but how can I know as her coach and be able to coach her?
I think part of it's being curious.
Okay.
Because you have not taught Eureka 5th grade math, you are able to look at it from a different lens and be curious. And I would just simply say, what misconceptions did you see in this lesson today? And then think of a lesson future. How can we prepare for said misconceptions? And so just, the dialogue is going to be there. I think managing the time, I think a lot of times, this is not just Miss Bolton, but teachers are just like, well, I know I need like these 10 scholars to go do this. They didn't get it, but like, how? How can I do that? And I think, we have the technology, and I think utilizing the technology as like a second teacher, we have it. There are some lessons that she could pre-tape, let them watch and listen, and then she can pull small groups, whether to be proactive or reactive.
I was just wanting to get some more ideas or strategies. I do like that, because we were just talking about that at lunch, about how when we were in the pandemic, we had to do things like that. We record ourselves and go back to those lessons so you can pull that recording up. So let's not forget about some of those strategies that we implemented that we could still use, because that's another, I can't teach you right now, but here I am.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah. There's a program that we tried piloting in the middle school, Southern, when I was at Southern, called Guided Math. And it works. It works for middle school. Sometimes it's more challenging because of our timing.
Right.
But I see some of those components might be beneficial as well. So if I'll have to send you the link to that.
Yeah.
But because
I'm guided reading, so I used to go to all the guided reading training.
Okay, so
CF
that might be a great conversation to have with her, because some of those strategies on how to utilize the time and obviously, with Eureka, adding in stations isn't always flexible. It's not always prepared, but I think doing that more often than not is benefit. And that's what I did in the middle school version. I couldn't really do it every day because of the concepts, the kids, all of the things, but I was intentional about trying to get it in once a week, 3 times a week. So I could pull small groups and work with them how I needed to work with them.
Because the real elementary model, you have an assistant, you have that guided. I have a group, assistant has a group, here's a group, that type of thing.
Yes. So I think that would be a good next step to help her get in there, because then when she's thinking about the misconceptions, she can pre-plan. Like the week prior, one of her station activities could be a review on that skill, so that the time next week when I go to do that lesson, we've already been proactively scaffolding for it.
Gotcha. So it's the key, like I said, right now, is small groups. Breaking it down by the standard.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with all the data we have. There's so much data between interims and MAP.
I know we have another MAP coming up.
Yeah.
I'm ready to really see those though.
I know, me too.
All right, so thank you for our meeting time today. So just a couple of things just to leave you with is how you plan to support, motivate, and encourage scholars through productive struggle. We definitely identified some strategies and talked about that. And then how do you intentionally plan to incorporate tasks that provide productive struggle into the lesson. So basically we're on a starting point. You've already kind of grappled with that. And so basically the teacher will create a lesson that entails how you plan to introduce and implement productive struggle into the lesson. The lesson plan will include specific questions that will gauge conceptual understanding, and you'll be able to articulate the levels of support with individual students who are at various levels that when it comes to productive struggle with math concepts.
Yeah, so and that sounds like something I would want to focus on with my regular math classes, because that intentionality there, I think, is needed anyway, aside from that. So I think using that idea and that goal in those classes is going to be a challenge, but also worth it. So.
Right. Because I feel like your math one, even though I heard Gigi say, you know, but
Yeah.
that's what you want. You want
Yeah.
to hear that, but you went right over there and you were able to help steer her in the right direction. So definitely with our general ed classes, working with them, Miss Teresa. So I think this all came around a good time. And you have anything else for me? Any questions for me?
Not at the time.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.